Mason took the stairway one slow step at a time, his legs trembling. The shifting of the walls around him, the voice of the wind through nooks and recesses, the flapping of something loose on the rain-dashed roof. He stood on the landing in the dark, and the torch only lit a small patch of floor ahead of him. The bacon and eggs sloshed heavily in his gut. He found them in a room at the back of the house, sprawled around one another on the floor, sleeping or dead, or both. Calvin, Zeke, and the family from the other house, and in the corners at the far end of the room were 2 women and 3 men, huddled together, limbs entwined in rest, like creatures in a nest.
In a town in southern England, people are going missing. Mason, a homeless ex-con, arrives in the town to beg his wife for a second chance and atone for past mistakes. A vampire god, once worshipped by ancient Britons, has awoken from hibernation and plans to turn Great Britain into a vampire isle. But first, people of the town must be converted and the gospel spread. Within a week, the town is quarantined by the military and the nights belong to the undead. There will be no escape for survivors. King Carrion was written by Rich Hawkins and published by the Sinister Horror Company in 2016. In this episode of Sinister Reread, Justin Park chats with Rich about one of the publisher's bleakest titles. Hi, this is Justin from the Sinister Horror Company. I'm here speaking today with fellow West Country author Rich Hawkins, and we're here today to discuss his book King Carrion. Hi, Rich.
Hello, mate. You alright?
Yeah, I'm good. How you doing?
Yeah, not bad. The writing's a struggle a little bit, but it's getting there, isn't it? Be fine.
Well, yeah. I mean, if it was easy, then everyone would be doing it, right?
Everyone is doing it, it feels like that anyway.
Sometimes it feels like that, doesn't it?
It's like blood of authors everywhere. Just it's like
You want to feel special, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We've actually, the Sinister Horror Company has published a number of your books. We published two books, haven't we? We published King Carrion and Maniac Gods.
Yeah.
And you've written a number of other books published by a number of different people.
Yeah.
But today I wanted to talk about the first book of yours that we published. What book was that? Was that the 5th book that you'd had released?
Yeah, 5th or 6th. Yeah, it would have been a couple of years, or maybe a couple of years after the last plague.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it would have been after Black Star, Black Sun. Yeah, so I'd probably say the 4th or 5th book. Yeah.
The first question I always like to ask in these interviews is a very basic and simple question. So with King Carrion, and that question would be, why did you write the book?
When I first started writing, or trying to write proper, seriously, a few years before that, I'd always fancied doing a vampire story, and because when I first thought of it, it was around the time of Twilight, and I was just like my wife just loved the Twilight films, and I was forced to watch 2 of them, and it was just horrendous, and I felt this is not vampires are not this, this is just it's pathetic. It was tempting me from then to sort of write a vampire book and to make them into what they really are, disgusting, feral, bloodthirsty creatures, not these sparkly monsters. So yeah, part of it was that, just sort of to write something with what you could call proper vampires in it. I had the urge to write about vampires, stuff like 30 Days of Night. That inspired me quite a bit. The film and the comics. I just wanted to put something out there that was put vampires as horrible, disgusting creatures that they are, that just want to kill you and not take you out for a dinner date.
So your first inspiration became like, it was more like a rebellion after being subjected to a couple of the Twilight movies. So do you know roughly when that was? Because that was what, mid noughties, end of beginning of the tenties as we call them, wasn't it? Do you know
Yeah,
roughly first had that
yeah.
inspiration?
I mean, I think the first Twilight film was like 2009, maybe. I hate myself for knowing that. It was like 2008, 2009. So I remember it being advertised in the cinemas when when I first moved in with my wife. Like we first moved in together. That's why I remember, obviously, not to say why I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
the film.
So
Yes, so it
did you ever
would have been there gestating for a few years, and then like once I got around to sort of thinking about writing a vampire story, that was there the back of my mind, thinking, oh my god, that's like I hate that sort of vampire. So they're barely vampires as they are. They're just like abominations. Um, twatish abominations. So yeah, I just wanted to write a gory, disgusting vampire story.
that part of rebellion, that's where that inspiration came from. Was there any other inspirations you drew on when you started writing the book? Like, what would you say were your biggest influences of books? Was there any particular other books or films or music that you say had a direct influence on the creation and the thoughts of King Carrion?
Yeah, I would say Salem's Lot, definitely. I Am Legend as well, the book. I think I've been reading that not long before actually like started writing it, actually. Oh, sorry, rereading it because I read it a few years before anyway. I must have recently seen the film 30 Days a Night as well, so I like the whole idea of like vampirism as a contagion. So I like writing about sort of viruses and all that sort of stuff anyway. So the idea of vampirism is a proper like plague almost, and not like basically where if you get bitten or scratched or you ingest any of their blood, you become infected. You are an infected person who will become a vampire. Not in some like vampire media where you need to be bitten by a vampire and then like drink their blood too. So which is fine in itself. To me, like that's how Bram Stoker did it. But yeah, I was very interested in the whole idea of vampirism spreading through a town, much like Salem's Lot, which by the time I first started writing, I'd read Salem's Lot about 4 or 5 times anyway. So yeah, that was very much at the back of my mind when I was thinking about this book. Yeah, plus there's an apocalyptic angle to it as well, which I do like to write about, if you've noticed. Yeah, so it was a mixture of those things really, where you see the spread of vampirism as a plague upon the land, as well as the idea of King Carrion being some sort of pagan god, which brings a bit of folk horror into it, because I've always liked folk horror, and I think it went well with the idea of this like ancient vampire that was worshipped by ancient Britons before the Romans arrived, and then got rid of all that. Christianity came along and purged all the naughty pagans and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so there's a few things that went into it, and also the main character. He's another like broken person who I like to write about. Like anyone who's read my stuff will know that I rarely write about happy people or well-adjusted people. Usually, everyone's got a problem or something affecting them or some personal demon that they can't get rid of. And the main character in King Carrion is no different. He's homeless, having just gotten out of prison, causing a traffic accident in which a little girl died. So he's obviously he's suffering from like immense guilt and regret, and his wife's left him over this. So he's trying to find her. So he arrives in the town to find her, and it's themes of sort of redemption and asking for forgiveness, sort of stuff, and that's how the main character is sort of was formed.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about your like for writing about broken characters, which is prevalent in a lot of your work, including in King Carrion with Mason. What is your attraction to these broken characters and writing about them? Why do you find that so fascinating?
I think it's just more interesting to write about, and I don't think anyone's interested, especially people who read horror. They don't want to read about people who are happy and everything's going well for them, and I find it much more interesting to write about someone who's facing problems, and I don't know, it just gives them an edge, but then again, it's, I suppose, in a way, it's good you can feature a happy character who, within the course of the book, becomes unhappy, caused by, the story, and, things in the story are tearing their world apart, and then they're not happy. They're not really happy anymore, are they? So, yeah, I think it's just more interesting, really. It's just, I find it easier to write about damaged characters too. I don't know. I don't know really.
So it gives you more of a hook, does it, on sort of the people?
Yeah, it's more. I think it's more appealing to the reader, really. I mean, plus, if you read about a character who's like got so many problems, it makes your own life feel better, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, it makes it easier to sort of empathise and identify with the character. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've had quite a lot of like depression and anxiety issues in the past, so writing about people with that is just second nature.
Do you find then, so you talk about the fact that you've had depression and anxiety in the past, and I don't want to get more personal than you're comfortable with, but I'm just sort of curious, when you're writing about somebody that's had a similar experience with depression or anxiety, does it help you to write like that? Is it almost like a sort of a form of therapy that you can kind of analyze it from a distance through a different character?
That's the thing. I've seen other writers ask that question who have like been affected by mental health issues, and a lot of them say that it does help them, which is fair enough because obviously different things, help different people. But for me, no, not really. It doesn't do any sort of healing or any sort of, it doesn't really. I'll explain.
It's not like it fixes you, but does it feel good to express that, to talk about it?
In a way, but I don't know. I don't really. I don't know. I don't see like my like depression on that is part of like my identity. So I don't. It's not something I try to think about too much. You know what I mean? It's not something that like defines me. So it's just. I don't know. It doesn't. I wouldn't say it puts things in perspective if I write about it either. It just, it's just there and that's it. You know what I mean? I don't, I've written about it and there, it's there on the page, and I might look at it and think, oh, that's quite good. That sort of captures the feeling of depression or whatever, or anxiety, and it doesn't like help me in a way, like in a way of like making me feel better at all. No. But that's just me, I suppose.
It is what it is, essentially. It's how you're writing it. So want to go back to the talking about the vampires at the moment. So you talked about we talked about the inspiration. You had a lot of inspiration from books in movies with regards to other vampire things, 30 Days a Night, Salem's Lot,
Yeah.
I Am Legend, which was one I hadn't picked up before as an inspiration, but
Ah,
actually I can really see that now you mentioned it. So I just sort of wondered then, like when it comes to vampires, they're so well known, aren't they, as a horror character? So what
yeah.
actually is your opinion of vampires and vampire tropes? Which ones do you like and which ones do you hate?
Well, anything that sort of I can respect. Like if you look at the old Hammer films, the Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee films, um, they show that that Dracula or vampires in general are scared of the cross. Um, you have to stake them in the heart, stuff like that, which is I think is good for back then. I don't think those tropes as such hold up too much now, but that might be just because the way I see the way my vampires are more um, viral than supernatural. I mean, my vampires are still affected by sunlight. But I don't explain that in the book either, so it's not really a supernatural thing there. But it's stuff like you have to invite them in to your house before they can come in, stuff like that. Garlic, no. So it's silly now. Silver, I think silver still works. Um, well, I think it's not too corny. I think stakes at the heart is quite corny now, and crosses and being scared of crosses is quite corny. But only because it's been done before so many times, and it's been done by the best. So they sort of use that up, and I think it would still work in a like horror comedy sort of setting. But I think if you had like 30 Days a Night and suddenly the vampires in there were scared of the cross, it would be ridiculous because the rest of the stories in that universe is so like I was gonna say realistic, but it's vampires. So you have to hurt them. You have to hurt them like with real things. Like a bullet in the head or chop their head off. You know what I mean? Or an axe to the skull. So yeah, those sort of tropes where what affects a vampire. A few maybe have held up well, like but some are sort of I don't know, a bit in the dust, so to say. Like sleeping in coffins, it's a bit out of date now, isn't it? I don't know. It's probably because I see my vampires more like closer to zombies than Count Dracula. You know what I mean?
So you don't like the more fantastical
No.
elements to them?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah. You said it much better than me.
Okay, so yeah, so like I Am Legend, you're kind of almost trying to boil them down to that. It's a bit more of a grimier, scientific, as realistic as you can kind of get with the idea of
Yeah.
That's
Exactly. Yeah.
it down.
I mean, like a bullet to the head will kill them. I mean, it's they can pretty much survive anything, apart from being beheaded, um, you know, getting their skull smashed in, or like being chopped in half, basically. So
Yeah, all
yeah,
those.
there's no there's no mystical um angle to it.
Okay.
They're not going to be like they're not going to count out all the what, what's the legend? Is it pumpkin seeds or something? Sunflower seeds. If you spill them on you put like so many down on the floor. The myth is that the vampire will stop coming after you because he is forced to count the seeds.
He'll count. Yeah, vampires are supposed to be compulsive counters. So if you drop
Yeah,
rice, they say rice, isn't it? Drop rice on the floor, and it'll
yeah.
have to stop and count every grain.
Is that what
But,
they got? Is that what they got? The Count from Sesame Street from them?
well, I don't know. I almost think that maybe it's the other way around.
One.
People, maybe they've been watching too much Sesame Street. I don't know.
I just find it. I got a weird picture now, like the creators of Sesame Street. You know, like being like vampire addicts. You know, like weird. I don't know. He's like, I need a new character with Sesame Street. We've been watching these like gory vampire films. Oh yeah, Count Dracula. Obviously, who would have thought?
Are you getting an inspiration for King Carrion too there, Rich? I do wonder.
No, I did start writing a sequel.
We'll chat about that in a bit. What I
Oh,
want to talk about with regards to King Carrion. So we talked about the vampires and about the inspiration where you come from and what you were doing with those vampires. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the actual technical writing side of it. So
yep.
if you cast your mind back to creating King Carrion, how did you actually write the book?
Well, with most of my books, I tend to do a lot of advanced plotting. Where I put down a lot of scenes before, and what's the word for people who just write and go along with it?
Oh, you're referring to what they call pantsing, don't they?
Pantsing, that's it. Yes.
Yeah.
God, that scares the shit out of me. Doing that, I could not. That would just freak me out too much. I could not do that. I have to plan out like at least a chapter in advance before I write it. Before I write some words.
And that's interesting. So with King Carrion then, and your planning of it, is that what you were doing? Were you planning a chapter at a time, or do you have the whole story planned out before you start writing?
No, I never have the whole story. I might have the ending if I'm lucky, and then I'll work towards it.
And so how does your planning look? What detail is that? How do you go about doing it?
I mean, it'll usually be write down a vague sketch of the like the chapter, of what it is, and that could depend, and that can it varies on what the actual like the scene is. If it's like an action scene, and then if it's an action scene, it requires more specific plotting, I find, because if you're trying to write like a fight scene, you have to plan who does what against who, how are they going to get out of this, so and stuff like that, and who might die, why they die, how they die. I find that I need to like plan that out, otherwise I'll end up writing myself into a corner, and then I'm like, oh shit, I've got to start again. So it always helps if I plan out stuff like that. If it's like a scene that's two people walking along a road or something, I can usually go along. I can usually cope with a vaguer outline of what they're doing, and sort of go with it from there. But yeah, I find like action sequences, I really need to sort of like nail down what's going to happen before I write it, at least.
Okay, and so with King Carrion, you were following your normal process of you'd had this idea. Did you have the ending of King Carrion before you started writing it?
No, I didn't. No, I had. I think by the time I started writing it, I sort of had probably half of the book planned out, up to where like sort of the vampires are taking over the town, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I knew I had like little plot points to go with, that I had to sort of hit, every once in a while to like sort of keep the story in the direction.
Yeah, so you had those stories
needed to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Once I got past that, it became a bit more Not difficult, but you need to figure out what the characters are going to do, like in response to this horrendous event, and who's and where they're going to go, what they're going to do. So that's when the sort of the plotting really sort of got down to the nitty gritty, and they probably slowed down the writing of the book, but that's just the way it is, really. I felt like it worked, so it worked for me at the time. It worked for me on, like, most of my books. So for me, that's not a problem, because I know that if I do that, if I plan ahead and get the story beats down, that I'm going to finish it and not end up stuck somewhere.
Yeah, don't end up, like you said, writing yourself into a hole where you've got to stop and come back, and you've wasted time, haven't you, effectively doing that?
Yeah, and I hate having written, like, say, 5,000 words and then realizing that that's going to be discarded because that part of the story is, I can't use it.
Yeah,
it feels like I've just wasted time completely, and like you think, oh, fucking idiot, be better than that. Come on,
Yeah, I understand. We're kindred spirits on that one, Rich. Believe me. So, you talked about it slowed down a little bit whilst you were plotting out the second half and really understanding what the reactions were going to be from there. So, how long did it take to write the whole book, do you think, from start to finish?
I think it was about 4 months, maybe 4 or 5 months.
Is that standard for you, do you think?
Oh, not at the moment, no.
Well, go back to the time when you were writing, because there was time when you were writing quite a lot.
I mean, when that was published, I think that year that King Carrion came out, I released Scavengers and Deathcrawl, self-published. They were 2 novellas. That was around the same time, and then there was a novella called Ruin from Dark Minds Press, and they were all released in the second, a 4-month period, I think, in 2016.
So did they all take roughly about 4 months to write each?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, I think the slowest one of the lot was Ruin, but I think the quickest one was Deathcrawl, because that's just like a one-way journey through like a village full of mad people who want to kill and possibly do other horrible things to you.
Yeah, I've read that. That's pulpy. That's nasty. That one, real nasty.
Yeah. So I had a few readers didn't like that one. Said it wasn't. It was too. I think I had one that said too bleak. But I thought, if you read my other stuff, so this is too bleak for someone who's read my other stuff, So I was like, oh yeah, I think it was just a complaint. It was complaint about how the characters basically die, and there's not much hope at the end.
With the writing of the book, you plotted it, you've written it, 4 or 5 months is done. Was there much in the way of revision on the book after the first draft?
Not too much. I was pretty happy with the story when I first got it down. So I mean, the first draft itself would have been revised a bit anyway. Sometimes I tend to revise as I go along if I'm in the mood. Not always, but I was happy with where the story went. It was a fair bit of work to do with sentences and word flow and stuff like that. Yeah, typos and grammar mistakes and that. Yeah, it's a fair bit of that. Like there is any other book. But I was happy with the story, so that's what sort of counted back then. Because you always know, you can always correct typos and correct, dialogue that doesn't go properly. I mean, I could read it now and I'll probably think, oh, I could still change a lot of it. Not a lot, but when I was rereading it, bits of it today, and I was trying to find a suitable like part to read. And you look at bits, you think, oh, I could have done better there, or that's a bit clumsy, a bit clunky. But that's the way, isn't it? I'm sure you feel the same about your work, and every other writer does that as well. So
every creative will look back on their own pieces and think, oh, I could just change out there. That's just the way. So, but when you read it, you were happy with the story and happy with the way that worked. Was there any things that you did take out that you'd originally written inside that wasn't going to go in there, or any ideas that you originally planned or thought of but never actually made it into the book?
I was going to have some. I was trying to work a way of getting some flashbacks into the story from ancient Britain, when like King Carrion ruled, his little villages and when people worshipped him.
Which is the bit we see at the start on the prologue, isn't it? So you're going to have more of that sort of back in, really,
yeah. I just could not work it in somehow. I was trying to find an angle, but it didn't fit in naturally. It would have been, it probably would have been quite good, but it probably would have taken the reader out of the current story. It probably would have slowed down the pace of the book too much.
Right, so it was a pacing issue really that kind of made you change your decision.
Yeah, that, and it probably, it was just, I think it was just unneeded. It wasn't. I mean, I was trying to keep it quite a lean book anyway. I didn't want to indulge myself by writing several chapters of set in in ancient Britain where it's not going to affect the story that much.
Yeah, so you say you were trying to keep it a lean book, and why was that? What was your vision of the book?
Well, I just wanted because the main aim of the book itself is just to make a sort of a balls to the wall vampire story. It was, I mean, I've always liked James Herbert, his early stuff, sort of that style. Nothing too superfluous, just sort of keep the story as streamlined as possible, and it's going for sort of the 70s or 80s nasty horror paperback. You know what I mean? That sort of style.
You talked about this very briefly, and I kind of sort of diverted you off on a different way earlier on when we were chatting. But you did mention you started talking about the themes in the book. So I did kind of wonder, what themes and messages were you exploring within King Carrion? Because, you were making this pulp kind of horror book, but, I'd say arguably there are themes and messages in that book at the same time. So I just wondered what your opinion of what it was that you were communicating with those.
The main ones I was trying to sort of bring out in the story were redemption, guilt, and regret, basically. I mean, Mason, obviously he was obviously he was sent to prison for causing this accident where a little girl was killed. So he'd been drinking, before driving. So he had a problem, and this problem, ended up killing someone, killing a little girl. So obviously he's got massive guilt from that. He's not a bad person as such, but he's flawed, deeply flawed, and a lot of the story is him trying to be better. Because when he arrives in the town to find his wife, he says to her that he wants to be a better man, and sort of try to make up a little bit for mistakes in the past and the way he might have treated his wife. But she's having none of it. So that makes him feel worse. So yeah, and I think, and then this, this outbreak of vampirism gives him an opportunity to sort of, help people in a way. Sort of to show that he can, fight evil and sort of, do some good.
Yeah,
And
right.
it shows that, however, like whatever bad stuff he did, and you might say he's a bad man. He like nothing compared to these nothing compared to the vampires. The vampires are just like the worst. So and he tries to help. He returns to his wife to try and protect her.
So, in
During his,
effect, you're saying that the vampires are they're almost like a metaphor for that regret, for that evil that's kind of
yeah,
going
yeah,
out, influencing everything around the world and outside his life. And by him being able to beat those back, he's proving that he can beat back all of the problems and the wrongdoings that he's had in his life before.
yeah, definitely. It's. I mean, anyone who's read like more than one of my books might notice it is a recurring theme in some of my characters where they use like an apocalyptic event or some sort of disaster to um, redeem themselves or work towards being better. When everything's gone to shit, and they're actually tested by otherworldly events and stuff like that. Zombies and monsters and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like in your work, it's like the apocalyptic event becomes the great leveler. Everybody's put on the same level. There's no societal constructs as such anymore. There's no class.
Yeah,
There's
exactly. Yeah,
no wealth. And so it's from that, all you've got is yourself, your grit, your determination, and what you really are. So this event is kind of showing you the real you.
yeah. It just, I mean, it's yeah. Again, that's common in my books. Is people get stripped down to what they are underneath. Get rid of all the niceties and the bullshit of the civilized world. And you show like when they're under pressure or they're trying to protect their loved ones or get revenge on someone or it's like I'm like a big fan of David Moody for like for years now, and like his stories they show a lot of the stories his stories come down to like just ordinary people thrown into like horrendous situations like how they react, trying to survive or stuff like that.
Yeah. So David Moody, you'd say big influence on yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean one of the uh yeah, definitely one of my. I mean, yeah, one of my biggest influences easily. I mean, you've got like when I was younger, it was like very much Stephen King. Um, but then once I sort of was introduced to like away from the what you might call the mainstream, people like Stephen King and Dean Koontz, you get to like um, become more aware of other writers who are, in my opinion, better writers who don't get the praise that they should do. I mean, I know David Moody's like he's been published by like like one of the big six publishers, but he should be more well known than he is. Same with like um, Adam Neville, Gary McMahon. They're like two of my big influences as well. And I mean, I know Adams seems to be getting more out there now. Like Gary's is a great writer, and it's a shame that I think he's he's not recognised as much by the mainstream. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Having that wider audience appreciation and well, just having that wider audience, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's a problem for all of us in a way. But yeah, it does. It does annoy you when you see publishers publish like books by fucking stupid celebrities, about how they lost 6 stone, or how they or this stupid cookbook, and you've got while all this like good stuff gets ignored, just like I don't know. That's just me being bitter for other people, but
it's a fair point, Rich. It's a fair point. So so
I told you I'll offend someone or something. Someone who's a fan of those celebrity books is going to listen and go, he's a twat.
It was
probably a point for
surprising fan of those celebrity books are listening to this podcast, but yeah,
you never know, mate. You never know. I think some people have varied tastes. People might read Upon Waking one day, and then the next day they're reading, Peter Andre's 12 Steps to Life.
That's your favourite book, isn't it? It's your classic.
Yes, I borrowed it from Matt Shaw.
He wants it back. He's just messaged me.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, one thing I'm always curious about when I speak to other writers is when they're writing their books, and so with this one we're talking about yourself and King Carrion. Do you listen to music when you're writing and or editing? And did you listen to music when you were writing King Carrion? And if so, what?
I used to listen to music when I was writing. Like stuff like The Last Plague and Black Star Black Sun. I listened to music when I was writing those.
Do you know what you were listening to during those?
Oh, blimey. Whatever caught my, whichever sort of caught the mood for that day, really. It might be some like instrumental stuff. Yeah, really varied. I can't really. I mean, I know you're a fan of like Mogwai and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, Mogwai, Sigur Rós, all great stuff to listen to.
Yeah, Sigur Rós. I will listen to that. It depends on how I feel. Right? Yeah, that sort of worked for like a couple of books or 3 books, but then I don't know. The music started to sort of distract me from the writing. So I ended up writing with where I was watching like a TV show or something.
Oh right, so you have the TV on in the background. So the conversation on the TV doesn't distract you when you're trying to write out your words.
No, as long as it's like a lowish volume. Yeah, I mean, it might be something. Usually, I put on something maybe that it's in the same sort of like subgenre as what I'm writing. Not so you get influenced by it, but just so it's there, like in the background, and makes a mood. If you know what I mean. I might put on like just say if I was writing a zombie story, have like Romero's Night of the Living Dead in the background, not to like copy it, but just to have it there to like like a comfort blanket in some ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like you say, it's to get that mood, to get that kind of tone, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I would have I'll do that for a bit, and then sometimes I'll just write with nothing on. Apart from the noise of children screaming at me. It sounds weird about context. I have children.
Just in case everyone's unsure. What?
Yeah. Just in case someone just put down their Peter Andre book and they're like, "What the fuck's he talking about?" But just background ambient house noise, you might say. Yeah, it's weird. I might nowadays I might just sort of and then I put like a documentary or something, and just like listen, just have like I don't know, just have something speaking in the background. I'll tell you what I do like to use now is go on YouTube and you get like sounds of rain, sounds of like rain on the roof, like
Yeah,
you
those
know
sort
that.
of, yeah, the ambient looped sounds. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but you're in the rainforest or there's fucking loads of them. And if you can find one to like sort of suit the theme or like atmosphere of the story you're writing, I find it quite good because when I wrote what was it? I wrote a novella called The Great Beast, and it was in a we made William Holloway, who's a writer, very good writer, excellent writer. He did like a four novella anthology. The God, the what's it fucking called? Is there something? He did like he basically created a world where Cthulhu had awoken, and he ended up and during like Cthulhu's awakening, all the squid in the sea in like the seas and that mutated into like so they could come on land and like, kill people. So I was writing a story for that set in England because the other writers were like writing their stories in set in the US. So William like contacted me to write a novella set in this world, and obviously what the effects of Cthulhu on the planet, where he's like affected the oceans and stuff like that, and there's like loads of flooding and it's always raining. So the novella I was writing was like set like after everything had gone the fuck. So it was just raining constantly, and it's like squid, these like monstrous squid come out at night to hunt on land for people. So I basically like wrote a lot of that with rain sounds on a loop from YouTube.
Right.
Just to get in, yeah. So I quite enjoyed that.
Okay. So that's interesting. So you're using those ambient sounds to sort of get into that atmosphere. Now you talked about your setting that you set that story in England.
Yeah.
And sort of going back to King Carrion then, I just sort of wondered the settings that you used in King Carrion, did they hold any significance? And also sometimes the namings of people. I know sometimes names of places and people sometimes carry significance with an author, which is never really explained, and so us as readers might read it and might kind of lose that significance. So was there any significance in any of the places or the character names?
I mean, when I wrote King Carrion, I was living in Salisbury, so I think basically the town that's featured in King Carrion is basically Salisbury, just not in name and without a cathedral. Because when I was writing it, I imagined a lot of the places to be in Salisbury. You know what I mean? So and now I'm back in Somerset. Obviously, I think I'll set most of my stories in the southwest. But yeah, I tend to stick to the south of England anyway. Is that up north a bit daunting?
Is that because
It's weird, isn't it? It's not.
Do you do the southwest because you do set a number of them around that area? Is that right? What you know, or is it
in a way? Yeah, in a way. Plus, I feel like an attachment to the area as I get older, especially.
Yeah. Is it an
Yeah, I feel
attachment?
more attached to the area.
Is it a detachment? See, I think sometimes maybe it's you just want to fuck up the place you live in.
No, I mean, no, because I generally do like Somerset, and I don't know, it's just feels the right thing to do, really. I don't know. I would find it difficult to write like a story set in Humberside, something like that, Merthyr Tydfil, Bognor Regis. I don't think I could write stories like that.
Would it feel disingenuous because you don't know the area that well?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Plus, because I like to write about places like been, and you can like paint, say like in the Last Plague, a lot of the places there were like a lot of towns and villages in that book that are like featured are real places. Because the village they're all from, the main character from is the village where I grew up, basically. So yeah, I like to just sort of feature, places that I know and that are normal places, and turn them into places that are like, got monstrous infected people roaming around and stuff like that. Not in any, not like you said, just to like destroy them for the sake of it. Yeah, just it just feels right. It feels like I don't know, like I'm being loyal to my part of the country.
Yeah. So another thing I wanted to ask, with kind of like your writing process, do you use beta readers once you've written a book, and did you use beta readers with King Carrion?
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, I had a beta reader for King Carrion, and
was that someone that was also a writer, or a professional editor, or just a friend?
they were a friend and aspiring writer, at the time.
Okay.
Actually, they were. I'll scratch that. They were a writer. I think they had something published.
What was their reaction?
They liked it.
Yeah.
Obviously, there were a few things that were like pointed out where this drags on a bit, or this bit could be improved. But yeah, the basic like heart of the story they liked. So yeah, I was happy with that.
That's good. That's good. And then the story. So it's ready to go. It's all. We're on the verge of it being published, right? On the verge of it coming out to meet a world that has not read King Carrion before.
By this young up and coming publisher who's
an up and coming publisher, yeah. So can you take your
these young bucks?
So can you take your mind back to that time when King Carrion is just about to come out? All that hard work of writing it, editing it, getting it together. It's now ready to go. We got a release date. It's about to come out. How are you feeling?
Nervous. Always nervous before a book gets released.
Yeah. And what was making you nervous?
Or whether people would think it was shit or not. That's the biggest fear, isn't it? That people are going to read and go, this is awful. Stop writing. Give it up. The Last Plague was much better. Stuff like that. Then you might get the first review in on Amazon, and then you're like, oh god, is it going to be like a 5-star or a 3-star maybe, or grade 1-star?
So what was the critical reaction then to King Carrion, and how did you take it?
That was pretty good. I think most people who liked it enjoyed it. Got a few sort of bad reviews, but that's the way it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm going to say, how do you take those bad reviews? I mean, do you read them to start with, and then how does that make you feel?
Oh yeah, I'll read reviews. I'll always read reviews. Yeah, but I mean, I'm not overly bothered if someone doesn't like the book of mine. Before, I mean, when I first started out, I would have been a bit offended. But then, sort of get a bit more older and more cynical and a bit sort of, just older and just annoyed. So you just don't really don't worry too much about it. If if I released a book and it had like 10 1-star reviews out of like 12 reviews, I would be a bit concerned.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're always going to get bad reviews from some people. I mean, one person who reviewed King Carrion, I think they put on there put on the review saying they won a free copy of it, like a free PDF of it or whatever, movie copy, in competition. So they said thank you for that, and they said the rest of it is rubbish.
So then, on the flip side, turn back to something a bit positive then, thinking of King Carrion, what are you most proud of about that book?
I mean, one of them's the cover. I don't want to, suck up too much to the boss, right? But I love the cover for it.
Yeah, I mean, how did the cover come about?
That's a nice cover. I can't remember now. I know that who did it? Is it
It was Vince.
It was Vince, wasn't it? Yeah, Vince Hunt. Yeah, he did it. Yeah, and I just when I first saw it, I loved it, and it really pops out.
It is a great
really sort of,
isn't it?
Yeah, it is definitely. It's I think it sums up what's within the book in a way. Yeah, it's like yeah, it's just cool. It's just a great image. I like it. Aside from that, I don't know, just kind of hard to feel proud of my work. You know what I mean? Once you start feeling proud of yourself too much, you get a bit conceited. Maybe I don't know. And like I said, I'm pleased with some of the stuff in the book. Stuff like some of the scenes where the vampires are like running amok, and I like the journey of the main character Mason. I like how it ends for him, sort of in a way. I like how he finally does something worthwhile, and he tried his best to be a better person. So I'm pleased with the journey of the main character and how that worked out. Yeah, and I'm quite pleased with how it wasn't panned critically either, so it did all right. Yeah, sold quite a few copies. That's all right. Yeah.
And is there any details in the book you think sometimes are overlooked by readers or people when they chat to you about King Carrion?
Not overly, no. I mean, I like with the prologue. It's set, in it's like set in 49 AD. People mention that, so I'm glad that's mentioned by it, because I did enjoy writing that. I did enjoy sort of fleshing out the mythology a little bit of King Carrion. I don't think there's any really parts that people don't mention as such. No, I don't know really. Maybe I think it could be the apparition of the dead girl that Mason that torments Mason. She is basically the well, it's implied that she's not real. I don't think she is real. I'm not sure myself, even though I wrote it. She's not. I wouldn't say she's a ghost, but she is like Mason's guilt, figment of his imagination. Like it's the girl that died in the crash that he caused. She pops up in the story to like sort of stare at him and sort of silently remind him that like he's a scumbag. Who killed him. Yeah, I don't think that bit has been mentioned. Maybe it didn't really work. Maybe it didn't work for a lot of readers, so maybe that's why they don't mention it. Maybe that sort of distracts from the story a little bit.
But well, maybe it might be a bit overly critical from your part. I mean, it could be just the fact that the vampires in King Carrion have such a big part of the story and are so in your face that
Yeah, could be.
It can put the shade on some of the other stuff. So you talked about that bit at the start. You talked about the King Carrion in the 49 AD bit, and then you mentioned about sort of fleshing out King Carrion and the mythology of it. So there's something which I said we'd come back to right near the start, and I've been dying to ask this question. You talked about the fact that you'd started writing a sequel to King Carrion.
Yeah, I had a few ideas for a sequel. Um, None of them I've sort of got beyond chapter one.
And why is that? I
But
mean, I don't need you to necessarily talk about those ideas if that's something you're still kind of still sort of mulling through. But yeah, what's kind of sort of you started to write this, so why have you sort of shelved them?
um, I don't know. It's basically a case of writing something and then thinking, oh my god, you know, this is terrible. You know, just like the writer's doubt. You know, the self doubt you get when you're writing something. And, you know, with me, tends to affect me quite a lot, and I'll think, oh, sod it, I'll write something else. So yeah, there's about 4 or 5 Word documents. All of them are various King Carrion sequels.
Oh right, so you've started like different types of story or different.
Yeah. I mean, um, I was finding it hard to like sort of work in where and when I would set the sequel. And if I could bring back King Carrion, because King Carrion, you probably wouldn't. I was when I first like thought of the sequel, King Carrion wasn't going to really return as such. He would be like in the background, like his like mythology would be constantly like in the background, and the characters would be aware of it. So that would have an effect on the story itself, sort of. But I wasn't sure if I could bring him back. And then I was like, well, do I set it like the day after King Carrion, or do I set it like 10 years in the future, where the vampires have taken over Great Britain, stuff like that? And I was just going between, do I make it into like a more of a horror thriller where people were trying to stop the vampires from like spreading, or do I have a scenario where they've already spread and they now rule the British Isles? Because like the first idea I had for the sequel is it's going to be set like several years after the events of King Carrion, and it was going to be like flashbacks to the events of the first book, where a vampire would escape the quarantine of the town and then get out, and then the plague would spread all over again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess there's so many different ways you can go with it, right?
Yeah, and I was just like, but then I started worrying like, oh, is it too? If I made it into like a post-apocalyptic one where the vampires have like spread everywhere, is that too? I don't know. My mum was saying, is it too cliched? Is it too like derivative? I don't know. Just a lot of self-doubt about it, really. And I think that's the idea I want to go with if I ever did write a sequel, would be to show things like years later, and like we've now got fortified villages dotted around the country that trying to protect themselves against these swarms of vampires and that. And I quite like it. I mean, I do like the idea. It's just I don't know. So I do write a lot of like post-apocalyptic stuff. Part of me thought I was just writing the same stuff as like other stories I've written. So I don't know. See how I feel.
Yeah, well, there's always that. You've got to have the enthusiasm, haven't you? And you've got to think, are you? There's nothing worse than writing exactly the same thing over and over again, because you as a writer is going to get bored of that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, that sounds exciting, Rich. I can see it in my head. I really can. I think there's a lot of people out there that have read King Carrion because, there's a lot of people that really like that book. Really like that book. I think they'd be dying to see a sequel.
Yeah, and the thing is, the way I've spoken to you about how the way like my writer's mind works. We can speak about this now, then I'll we'll finish this like the Skype call, then I'll feel like enthusiastic about a King Carrion sequel. I'll be like, oh my god, yeah, I'm gonna write it. Then tomorrow I'll be like, fuck it, like I don't want to do it,
Yeah, wake up.
Yeah, that's how it's been working. That's how it's been going for the last sort of 2 years. Shit. But so yeah, you never know, do you? How much it might stick.
Yeah, with the muse will carry you.
Yeah, my muse is a twat at the moment. So
he's telling off, doesn't it? Your muse.
Yeah. Oh god. Yeah. I mean, it's fucked off basically. Yeah.
Well, let's hope we can get it back.
Yeah.
That's it for my questions. I just wondered if there's anything else that you'd like to talk about with regards to the book that we haven't covered.
It's weird how much thought I give to books I've written after they've been published, and you write something, and then during the writing of the book, you're always thinking about that book. But as soon as as soon as the book's published, and you move to the next thing, you don't think about that book for a long while. You know what I mean?
Yeah. See, yes, I do, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I'll explain something how I feel with that, and I don't know whether you have it as well. But with me, I'll have a story in my head, and that story will like haunt me. I could be until I've written it, and once I've written it and I've made it a thing, I stop thinking about that story anymore. I've exercised that ghost.
Yeah, that's very similar. Yeah.
So yeah, you've created it, you've pulled it out of your head, and you don't need to think about it anymore because it's now its own thing, right?
Been exercised. Yeah.
So was it interesting coming back and thinking about King Carrion? Because you say once you've written it, you hadn't thought about it for much. So I guess you haven't thought about it for some time until now.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I thought about it was when I was thinking of writing, a sequel.
And when was that? Just out of curiosity.
Several times in the last couple of years.
Right. Okay. So you kind of
the most recent time would probably been about 3 weeks ago.
Oh right. As soon as that,
so it sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? It just shows how ridiculous my mind is.
It's not ridiculous. There'll be a lot of people listening to this, nodding their heads in agreement and going, "Yeah, I completely empathize. I understand." But believe me, you're not alone. No.
Yeah, I mean the idea. Well, because the apocalyptic King Carrion idea is the one that sort of stayed with me.
Yeah,
shockingly with me. Yeah, so you never know. I might write it.
Huh?
I might get off the computer after I finish speaking to you, and put down 4,000 words of a King Carrion sequel. You never know.
Well, let's see. I know there's be a lot of people out there that will after listening to this will be messaging you going, "Do it. How far have you got?"
I mean, yeah, I say I'll write 4,000 words, but I'll probably just be sat here brooding about I'm not writing anything.
Rich, thank you ever so much for taking your time to speak with me today, to cast your mind back to all those years ago when you wrote King Carrion. And yeah, thank you for taking that trip down memory lane with me.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's been interesting, isn't it? I hope I didn't take the conversation down to any too depressing levels.
Rich, you make bleak beautiful.
King Carrion by Rich Hawkins is available on paperback and Kindle. The Kindle can be purchased from Amazon. The paperback can be found through most book retailers, including Waterstones, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and directly via the Sinister Horror Company at the website sinisterhorrorcompany.com. Thank you for listening. Being an independent publisher, we are just like you. We share the same passion, the same love for horror fiction. We believe in the incredible work being created unnoticed by the mainstream. And we want to share it with the world. We are the Sinister Horror Company.